Good morning. Welcome to Unity Church of Hawaii. I'm Reverend Denese Schellink, the lead minister here. And today is Aloha Sunday. We are here at the crossroads of the Pacific Rim on the island of Oahu. It's the gathering place. And we offer a beacon of light and aloha to the world. Unity Church of Hawaii is a spiritual center that nourishes and nurtures a personal transformation. It fosters a co-creative relationship, and it elevates a global consciousness and demonstrates compassion, service to the world. We're so blessed that you chose to be with us here today. Join us as we watch these pre-recorded music of Give Me Courage and the Aloha Islands, these islands, in this recorded service. Enjoy. Thank you.
Doubt and fear surround me, the way ahead not clear. Through uncertainty you guide me, I know you're always near. Life may not be easy, but this I know is true. You're the God who's ever loyal. My life is safe with you, Jehovah. Give me eyes of faith and help me always see. There are more with us than against us. Courageous let me be. Courage, give me courage. With courage I'll endure. Jehovah, give me courage. Your victory is sure. Feeling fear is human. In my own strength I'm frail. You have been my rock and refuge. Your power never fails. Help me be courageous and let my heart be brave. Lasting harm will never hold me. No prison gate or grave. Jehovah, give me eyes of faith and help me always see. There are more with us than against us. Courageous let me be. Courage, give me courage. With courage I'll endure. Jehovah, give me courage. Your victory is sure. Jehovah, give me courage. Your victory is sure.
Have you seen these islands? Have you seen the beauty of this land? Do you know its people? Brothers, sisters, walking hand in hand. Have you seen the ocean, miles and miles of crystal deep blue sea. Can you smell the flowers? Fill the air with fragrances for free. This is aloha. This is aloha. This is aloha. This land of Hawaii. Have you felt the power? Ancient craters throwing lava in the air, or its green sweat beauty. On each island blossoms everywhere. Have you felt its spirit? Ancient gods, their mother still is here. You will love these islands. Nothing in the world can compare. This is aloha. This is aloha. This is aloha. This land of Hawaii. Have you felt the power? Mountain craters throwing lava in the air, or its green sweat beauty. On each island blossoms everywhere. Have you felt its spirit? Ancient gods, their mother still is here. Colored rainbows stretch across the sky. Waterfalls so high, mountains make you cry. You will love these islands. Nothing in the world can compare. When you touch its spirit, then the gift of love will lead you here. This is aloha. This is aloha. This is aloha. This land of Hawaii. Have you seen these islands?
Well, that was Kathy Foy, and such a beautiful, beautiful rendition of These Islands. Thank you, Kathy. Kathy's actually here in person. She recorded that months back, but we get to enjoy her live in just a few moments. So I want to welcome you to our service. Thank you for viewing us. I know there's a million places you could go now. We're all online, and so we're blessed and grateful that you said yes to be with us here today. And whether you're here live or watching this later, we care not. We're just blessed that you came to be with us. We are about transforming lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in the world. So we hope that something happens here today that you can move into that idea of transforming your life and inspiring people to make a positive difference in the world. We so believe that we are each individually an expression of the one presence and the one power, and that we are therefore inherently good. We are made in the image and likeness of this God that we call good. So our purpose is to express that divine potential in all that we do, and we hope that that comes through this service and online and in all that you see, all of the words, all of the music. So we have an affirmation today, and I'll just speak it, and you could say it along with me. God's healing power of divine life is restoring, healing, and revitalizing our world. I am guided by this divine life. Say that again. God's healing power of divine life is restoring, healing, and revitalizing our world. I am guided by this divine life. And so it is. So if this is your first time here, we hope you'll navigate our website and find a variety of ways to participate online. We're blessed that you chose to be with us today. We have a gift for you, a meditation. There should be a button close by for your gift. Yes, thank you. So our announcements today, immediately following this service, we've got our board president, Thomas Gallagher, bringing us our board update right after the service briefly. And then right after that, we'll be going to our Sunday Community Connection. You can find that on our eCampus page of our website. Very easy to find. And it's so full of so many wonderful ways of staying connected. We just want you to know that is our intention during this pandemic, during this seeming isolation, is to create a greater connection with you. And so go to our eCampus and you'll find something almost every day to engage in through prayer or classes. Next coming up event is our Q process. This is going to be May 2nd, and we're going to have it on Zoom this time. And so you that are far away from us can join us. And we're so excited to bring it in this capacity. It'll start from 9:30 to 5 o'clock Hawaii time. And you can register on our website. If you could do that quickly so we could get a book to you. If there's a workbook that goes with that, and go register on our eCampus and find your way there. And I'd like to invite my beloved partner, who also is a Unity minister, as most of you know, and has really embodied the Q process and really embedded it into the ministry he just came from. So, Reverend Larry, would you come up and give us of your testimonial about the Q?
Oh, since you asked so nicely, yes. Well, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you today with Reverend Denise. And as she said, the Q process has been something that we have embedded in our own life, in our relationship, and as part of a ministry team that I was involved in Santa Barbara for 5.5 years. It actually became a game changer. It became a cultural change for us to really come to understand what stood in between our communication and our intention to create a greater good in our life and in our community. It wasn't that we didn't have the good intention. It wasn't that we didn't have a vision and a mission that was compelling. It was that what got in the way was when we disagreed with each other, we didn't have a way to find our way back to that vision and to that mission. And so it was in that particular situation that many good intentions fall down. And because those intentions fall down, we don't get to go through with these great ideas and these great possibilities for our communities. And it works at the micro level and the macro level. So the Q process is something that brings us upright and turns us inward to really discover the source of our discomfort, the source of our suffering, the source of our pain, and also the source of our well-being, that which we seek to find in the world and in other people. And that correction process is such a powerful awareness that when we practice it, we actually can become someone who can be present to difficulty, present to conflict, and stay present to another person or to a group of people, regardless of disagreement, and work towards the greater good. At the same time, we are enlightening ourselves. We are seeing the good and the great in each other. So I can't commend it high enough because of how powerful it's been in a collective, in a corporate setting, and in my own personal life and in my relationship with Denise. So I commend you to the practice of it. Get involved in it. If you haven't done it before, do it. If you have done it before, do it again, because it just enhances and gets greater with repetition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Larry. Been a delight to join you in that practice. We're going to start a book study, and we're actually going to start that in 2 weeks from now, but we do have the group studies already formulated. You could go online and look under events and go into book study and find out how to sign up there's at least 4 book studies you can join online each day of the week. So we're so blessed with our facilitators, and we're working on getting the book. And the book is You Can't Sleep Through Your Awakening with Reverend Dr. Jane Simmons. So she's a friend of mine, a colleague, and she is also a partner with Gary Simmons that we have done Eye of the Storm. So I'm so delighted to bring this book to you about how to wake up and using the cue as part of a practice. But you don't have to go through the cue to enjoy it. It's got some wonderful nuggets. So go online, find out how you can join in and stay connected to us and have a spiritual awakening. So I'm so excited to be here with you, and there's so much going on. But let's move now into a more devotional part of this beautiful time together. And let's prepare for meditation, and we'll do that through song and through word.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of love. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
And today's daily word: I release all that does not contribute to my highest good. Let's take a moment to turn within as we realize that letting go is the way we make room for the presence and the power and the love. I release all that does not contribute to my highest good. And we affirm our statement of faith. Invite you to say it along with me. There is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life: the infinite, living, loving presence of God. Listen again as I say these words And allow these words to reach into the depth of your heart, where they can move you into that place of knowing there is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life. The infinite, living, loving presence of God. Only one. And oneness has no separation. Let us release thoughts of separation as we embrace the truth of our oneness with all of life, oneness with everyone and everything, for oneness leaves nobody out. This is where we abandon our senses. This is where we let go of our human perception that sees divisions and separation, and allow our heart to open and show us the vastness of our infinity, of our infinite oneness, in which we all live and move and have our very being. And what is all encompassing can have no opposite. In this oneness is perfect love. And there can be no opposite of that which is everywhere present in its fullness. So we release any fears, we release any judgments, we release thoughts of separation, of better or worse, and we open our heart to the infinite, ever-present, eternal beingness in which we truly live and have our lives. Let us take a moment now to go into the silence of our own being and allow this sense of oneness to expand in us in every direction, like a golden light glowing and growing in us, and casting out all fears and all doubts and all sense of separation, and bathing us in a universal life and light that connects us all, here, now, in the silence. And as we bring this quiet time to an end, let us remember the Lord's Prayer. And today we will share the Aramaic version. The Aramaic language is the language that Jesus spoke. Father, Mother, birther and breath of all, create a space in us and fill it with your presence. Let oneness now prevail. Your one desire then acts through ours as energy fills all forms. Give us physical and spiritual nourishment each day. Untangle the knots of our air that bind us as we release others. Don't let appearances make us forgetful of the source, but free us to act appropriately. Age to age, from you comes the glorious harmony of life. May these statements be fertile ground from which our future grows. Amen.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of love. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. You are my family. You are the face of God.
Thank you, Kathy Foy. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. And Alethea, so grateful to have you. So beautiful. Well, welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
We're trying out this new format and grateful that we're connected in this way. We're going to have a little dialogue, Larry and I, and we're calling this God, Me, and You.
Or God, you and me.
You and me. Okay. We're one of those things, and it's about using relationships as a spiritual path to awakening. So let's begin.
Let's begin. And it's really quite a joy to share this with you. We have discovered over our lifetime, and we have lived a lifetime together over 40 years, the thing that has really we have come back to time and time again has been the spiritual principles and the practices that have been the neutral ground in which we find our way back to each other. And so it's not just something that is we dip in and out of, like sometimes we do exercises and we find value in doing them while we're doing them. We live in a context, Denise and I, of the spiritual awareness that has really been the glue that has kept us together over the years, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it's been an evolution.
It's been an evolution.
It's been an evolution.
Yes, we didn't come in enlightened.
We did not. We started our relationship without God, right?
Yes, we didn't know there was a God.
We had abandoned that idea.
We really both had, yeah.
Yeah. So it was such a blessing when we came back to a spirituality, a path to awakening. And so we'll share a little bit about that today and
Yes.
also about everyday relationships. But I'd like
Yes.
to open with a quote from Michael Brown, his book called The Presence Process. You and I read that some time ago. And they should be able to see it. Yeah. So here it is. We are asked to consider that the distance we perceive between any other human being or a living creature and ourselves is the exact distance that lies between us and our experience of the presence, which is such a profound statement, isn't that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's just what brings us right into the context of our topic today, which is so often we get it in reverse. We have the contraindication of that idea, and we think that our difficulty with other people is what stands in the way of our connection with the divine, that our spiritual practice would be fine if we didn't have to deal with other people. Have you ever said that to yourself? And I think it's actually the opposite. And it's sort of the paradox of spiritual teachings, is that other people can be, and relationships can be our path to connecting with the divine. And that kind of comes from Jesus' teachings, which, he said, you all know the one that says, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. But I give you a second commandment, which says,
Love your neighbor as yourself.
right. And that's the hard one, right?
Yes.
It's easy to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. God is this infinite, amorphous being that, we don't have to deal with. We don't have to have conversations with. It doesn't cut us off on the freeway. It's never rude to us. Doesn't interfere with the way we want to live our life. But another person now takes on the seeming opposition to our well-being sometimes. And so Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. And this is that whole idea of seeing the other as part of this infinite oneness in which we all live and move and have our being. And there's the challenge, and there's the
a
work.
challenge. We also, when we first got to Unity in the late 80s, the first class that Larry and I took was A Course in Miracles. So we still pull from that truth and that perennial philosophy. So we're going to read a few of the A Course in Miracles quotes today, and I'll start with this, and then I'd like you to start into your story. When you meet anyone, remember, it's a holy encounter. As you see him, you see yourself. As you treat him, you will treat yourself. As you think of him, you think of yourself. Never forget this, for in him you will find yourself or lose yourself.
Yes. And we've all heard that expression that other people can be a mirror to us, yeah? And we don't like that very much. We sort of resist the notion that what we see in other people is really a reflection of what we are knowing or believing subconsciously about ourselves. But the good news about that is that if my partner, my neighbor, is a reflection of myself, then I get to see what needs to be healed. Once I get past the judging my neighbor, then I can see that my neighbor is showing me what's to be healed in me. And that's the profound, that's why all relationships can be considered holy, because they can take us back to the healing of our original self,
Yes.
to who we truly are.
And to allow the relationships to be an opportunity to awaken to the divinity in us and not be the enemy. Let me use this. Yeah. So I want to remind you also that we're inviting you to bring your questions to the Facebook or the online, I can't remember the other one, but if there's a feed for you, we'd love to hear your comments, and I'm getting those from Reverend Johanna. So join us on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll try to answer some of your questions.
Yeah, Denise is not on her Instagram account, but okay. So, okay. Yeah, all right. That was different than what I heard before, so thank you. Okay. So,
So you have a story.
I want to share a
Yeah.
story. Yeah, I want to share a story, and I think this is instructive of what really, how the rubber meets the road, how we can use the spiritual idea of relationships as being a path to our own spiritual awakening.
Lisa.
And so what's that?
Just look at Lisa.
Okay, well, camera left is there. I need to know where I should be looking. So.
Lisa's got her hands up.
Okay, Lisa's got her hands up. Okay, all right. So I'm going to look at Lisa. We're working out this TV thing, okay? Sorry, folks, but we have two cameras in the back, just so you know, and we love both of the people there, so it's hard just to look at one, but now I'm going to look at Lisa. So the story is this, and this goes back in my earliest ministry, my very first ministry. I was a little wet behind the ears, as the expression goes. I wasn't very evolved in terms of emotional intelligence. And so, at all points in our life, I guess we can say that we've been there. And what happened in this ministry, and this was after I had been there a couple of years, I got into a tangle with the Board of Trustees. And I felt that they didn't get me. Have you ever had a relationship where it doesn't feel like the person, they don't get you, and they're judging you, and they're judging you, and they're judging you, and you're just not understanding what is going on, feeling that you're being maligned, feeling that you're being unfairly seen. Anyway, and I was suffering under this belief. And it got to the point where, over a period of several weeks, that I just didn't want to play anymore. I just wanted to be out. And yet, the higher teaching was still there, like, you need to work this out. You need to find a way to work this out. So it's all sort of reached a crescendo, or a climax, on a Sunday morning when I had been wrestling with the devil of this conflict all through the night, hadn't slept. And I just kept running this story over and over again. Maybe you can relate to this. How could they? Why are they doing this? Why are they thinking this? Don't they know who I am? And that story was causing an increasing amount of suffering over and over and over again. And I woke up in the morning and I came down to talk to Denise, and I said, I cannot go and deliver the sermon today. Maybe you're going to have to do it. And Denise, being wise and not codependent in that moment, she said, honey, she said, I think you just need to surrender.
Surrender.
And you know, we've all heard, you know, the idea about surrendering. And I realized that is the one spiritual practice that I had not even thought of over this time of constantly trying to hash it over in my mind. And so I went back upstairs and sat down on my meditation couch, and I just said, I surrender. I mean, just as simply but as sincerely as I ever had in my life. I surrender. And I really meant that I was willing to let go of the whole story that I was holding about these people and about me, about the victim and the victimizer, and who was wrong and who was right. I just let it go. And as I kept repeating this, I surrender, I let go, this peace, and literally felt like it was like a nectar that just kind of like descended from the top of my head, just bathing my body, and my body just became so relaxed. And there was a moment where it felt like my body was shaking. It was like all of this tightness, this holding on, this constriction that was with my resistance to this was breaking down and breaking up. And when I stopped shaking, I felt this deep,
Peace.
beautiful peace.
Yeah.
It was so profound. And
I remember you coming down the stairs,
Then I came
and
down
there
to
was
share
a
with you.
completely different energy about him, and a peace
Yeah.
that passes understanding.
Yes.
And that you had given it over to God.
I just
Yeah.
I let go. And what's so beautiful, what's profound about this is not what I did, but the result that I got from that was that nothing had changed. The story hadn't changed. See? No one called me up and said, oh, Reverend Larry, you're right, we're wrong, or no affirmation, no support for my story, just letting go. So I went to church that morning, and I was standing at the back of the sanctuary before the service started. And the board president came up to me. And as she came up to me, I shared with her. I said, you know, this morning I sat in meditation, and I just surrendered. And I got this feeling that it's okay. We're just okay. It's going to be all right. And she looked at me and she said, that's amazing. She said, when was this happening? And I said, well, it was probably about 7:45 this morning. She said, that's when I was in meditation too, and I had the same feeling. And she had this big smile on her face. And she just looked at me with love in her eyes, and I looked at her with these loving eyes. And we just had a moment of just knowing that we had tapped into that universal connection that is without condition, that is without beyond right and wrong, as
Yeah.
Rumi said, that field of knowing. And I ended up meeting 2 other board members that morning who also had the same experience in their meditations that morning. So 3 people had a simultaneous experience of letting go because I was willing and they were willing to take that step.
To trust,
trust.
to let go and trust, and to know that God is in the midst of our challenges. But she can't work if we are, in the way. There's a beautiful book that says, what's in the way is the way. What's in the way is my thinking about the situation. So when I let go of my thinking and non-resistance, then God can do the rest. The healing can happen. We don't do that, right? That happens spontaneous when we
Yes.
surrender to a greater knowing.
Yeah, the Course of Miracles says all it takes is a little bit of willingness, and then the Spirit can move through us. But if we're convicted that we know what's best and we're trying to figure it out, there's no room in me, there's no room in us for Spirit to work. And I think that's the dynamic of what happened in that situation.
Yeah.
Is that as I got out of the way, and then the truth could come through. And the truth is that it is okay. It is already okay. The problem was in me. The problem is what I made up and the resistance in me.
And I'm recalling a story when I, just a few years back, actually now, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when I was going through the Q process, becoming a Q coach. And it's a perfect timing to tell this story since we're coming up to the Q. But I was in the midst of the training, and I was being debriefed by the founders, Gary and Jane. And they had a lot to say about how I was coaching, right? So, and that was feedback. But the problem was my mind kept hearing it as criticism. So I was hearing it, and pretty soon I couldn't even hear what the feedback was, because what was running in my mind was the shadowy thoughts that live in me. I'm not good enough. I've done something wrong, or there's something wrong with me. So I just wanted to run and hide is how it worked, and I managed to stay the rest of the day, but I got back to my room, and I just struggled. And I remember calling Larry, hoping you would buy into a story that there's something wrong with Gary, right? Not me, but there's something wrong with someone else. That's what we do typically, is we go find someone to corroborate our story that I'm right and they're wrong, right? That's what we do. Luckily, he's enlightened enough to know that that wasn't the truth, and that actually I needed to just be present in love, and not define it. So anyway, I got back to my room, and I want to read to you the email that I did that was so beautiful. I wrote to Gary, and I said, you know what? I am struggling here in my room. I'm trying to be present in my body. Yeah. And asking for a sign to keep me going into this Q process. After your remarks today during the debriefing I did, I really got triggered. I felt disturbed and vulnerable. I felt embarrassed and ashamed. I really want to do a worksheet on this because I know it's going to help me. But I'm also feeling disheartened and dejected that maybe this is not for me. And because you had so many things to say about my debriefing, I'm wondering if this is not a good match for me, and I'm just looking for a redirection at this time. But what I want you to know that I'm expressing from my shadow self, I know, of inadequate, not enough. But I'm also on my Q side, the other side, the divine in me, who is authentic and courageous. So please help me, is what I like. So he writes back this beautiful email, and I'm not going to read all of it, but I'll read a portion of it. He says, our most exceptional Q coaches have gone through similar challenges and have managed to get to the other side of these things. My prayer for you, he says, is I hope that you'll work through this seeming setback and truly come into ownership of your expertise and your worth as a Q coach. See, I was looking for it outside of me, yes? So I needed to come into knowing it for myself. He says, keep in mind that this is an unfolding that places you in relationship to your own internal disconnect. That's the key right there. That this unfolding, this experience put me in touch with my relationship to my own internal disconnect. He says, you have the integral qualities that translate into effective facilitation. Stay the course. You won't regret it. The program is challenging because the work has a greatness that only can be demonstrated by people like yourself that work through the seeming difficulties, discover the pearl of great price.
So beautiful.
It was so beautiful. It was exactly what I needed to hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's just really what all of the master teachers have said, is that there will be trials and tribulations. And, Buddha is saying, there will be 10,000 sorrows and 10,000 joys. And, to stay present to the teachings is where we get to the promised land, is where we get to that sense of our infinite nature, the part of us that, is okay no matter what's happening.
Yes.
And that's so worth going for, that it's worth growing through, the suffering that comes when the ego, when our surface mind is resisting life showing up the way it's showing up, especially with other people, because they seem to be what keeping us from the peace and the joy and the love that we're wanting.
That's right.
But really, they're only pointing to the part of us that is stuck with a belief about what's missing in us. And so they can be the liberators, not the jailers, as we sometimes think.
And we think that the conflict is with that person. I thought the conflict is with Gary, that he's inadequate. That's what we do, is we project our own sense of inadequacy onto someone else. But the conflict is really internally with the divine. It's really about our own shadow self believing in its identity rather than identifying as the I am. And there's the challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you meet anyone, it is a holy encounter. That's, of course, in miracles.
Yes.
Anyway, it doesn't say the people that are really nice to you. It says when you meet anyone, it is a holy encounter, because in the other person you'll find yourself or you'll lose yourself, depending on how you see them. So,
The Course of Miracles also says, a sense of separation from God is the only lack you really need to correct, is that sense of separation from God. And when I forgot who I was in that moment, I was totally separate from God. And I began searching outside of me for the answers of how to get back. And it wasn't until I did my worksheet and got in touch with who and what I really am to remind me, and that my response to that situation was my own sense of inadequacy, had nothing to do with the other person, that I could let go. It's non-resistance to what is happening right in front of us. It's our resistance that keeps us in suffering, doesn't it?
yeah, and we would be hard-pressed to realize that when we're in the middle of it sometimes. And I think that's why, this is difficult, because so often we can be so convinced that the problem is outside of ourselves. And that's why we need teachers and teachings and to immerse ourselves in those to the point where we finally have an honest reflection. And we can, and that's why the Q and practices like that, which are like holding a mirror up to our own experience, show us the way out of our suffering. Whereas our ego continually shows us the outside world and all the reasons and the people that are causing our suffering. And that's the illusion.
I've got a question from someone, so I want to share that from Cynthia. If you're in dialogue with each other and something is said that pushes an internal button, what is the first thing each of you do?
I run to the refrigerator.
Run to the refrigerator.
Go ahead. You
Yeah,
start.
okay, I'll start. So one of the first things I try to do is go to my heart. And I might even put my hand here, and I'll even try to be real honest in that moment and just say, ooh, that was sort of hard to hear. Wow. Let me just take that in for a second. So it's giving me a moment to take it in and not react, but just sort of sit with it. And then that's where I can get connected to who and what I am. So, that was sort of hard to hear. I might even say, okay, so is that really what you want me to know? To go a little deeper. Sometimes we say things that we don't really intend to say. We do that all the time. So taking a pause and having your process out loud is a practice that helps me get back into my heart so that I don't react, but respond with empathy. So I'm hoping that this heart connection, when I put my hand there, I'll respond with empathy. So, wow. So after hearing what you just said, I'm wondering, sounds like you might be upset and wanting some more dialogue or clarity. So I'll try to get underneath that, something like that.
Well, I have a different answer for that, but that's fine. That's how, vive la différence here. Sometimes if it's really something that really triggers us, we don't respond in such loving and thoughtful ways. And so I think that's just being honest, that I sometimes I will respond from my ego. And I will just defend myself or go, ouch, or, I don't like that. Or sometimes I just get very quiet because I'm trying to figure out, what does that person mean? And I'm more of an introvert, and I'm a thinker, so I'll oftentimes think about it because I know that sometimes understanding what's behind someone's words will give me a more enlightened response than if I just go to the reactivity if I feel hurt by what someone has said or what Denese has said. And then eventually I would get to that process of, coming. Sometimes we go away from each other, we're angry, we're upset, and we know that no good comes from staying in that dialogue when we're not feeling in our heart. We're in our head, we're in our judging minds, we're defensive. So sometimes we just go apart, and that seems to work well because it's not very long. And I think what I would say is the difference in, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the evolution for us has been, it's not that we don't still have issues and hurt that happens, it's that we come back together much, much sooner than we ever did. Because we have this awareness, we have these skills, and we have a way of processing that allows us to see very quickly where the source of our discomfort is. We're not likely to blame the other person for the way we feel, although we may have a request around, please, I'd like you not to, tell me this or that, if it's a sensitive area for us. But it's a request, it's not a demand, and we know, where the source of our pain is. And I think that's really the enlightening that's happened for us over the years.
Yes, and the maturity comes too when we realize that we don't have to sit together if we're triggered. We don't have to stay in a conversation to finish it. That sometimes the most loving and wise thing is to say, I'm not really navigating this conversation very well, and I'm liable to say something that is hurtful or that I don't really mean. So I'm wondering if we can postpone this conversation till tomorrow. And would you be willing to meet tomorrow? And we'll sit down and do a worksheet and come back with a much more open heart. And that, to me, is a much more mature relationship, that we don't have to stay at the table. That's the old rule, Don't run from this. Well, yeah, you do want to run. You don't want to be around me in this mindset that I'm in, right? And I need to be mature enough to say, I'm not able to manage this right now. Let's talk tomorrow. I think that's helpful.
Yeah, and I think the idea of a do-over has been what has been the practice that has helped us, because if sometimes when we just stay present, when we're just triggered, nothing good comes. It only descends into more hurt and suffering and less enlightenment. But when we go away and come back, we have a clear understanding of what's happening.
And our hearts are open.
Yeah.
Before we were in the mind, and that's where the egoic triangle happens, is in the mind. And so we got to get down back into the heart and not need to be right. I love to be right. Do you?
All the time.
All the time. Only all the time. Right.
Yeah, just 100%.
There's another question on the feed here, and then we have one more story to end with. So Maureen says, how does one transcend past patterns in order to manifest a relationship that is growthful?
That's well said.
Yeah. Good question, Maureen.
How do you transcend past patterns? Well, I think we may have touched on it already a little bit in talking about the process that we use. I think, the idea of transcending is maybe that would be not even possible unless you have maybe a lobotomy or something. Because I think most of us still have, we hold on to a lot of the conditioning that we had from childhood. And maybe not so much we transcend it, meaning that it no longer has any effect on us at all. But we have a way of being able to be in relationship with our past hurts, in which we see them for what they are and don't make them bigger than what they are. And in fact, they become smaller when we see them in the context of old beliefs that no longer, that we have a choice around whether we continue to believe them.
Yeah.
And so they show up. It's like there was a scene in the movie, A Beautiful Mind, where he was seeing, the main character was seeing people, that weren't there. And at the end of the movie, he had gone through some therapy and some healing. And his friend asked him, do you still see those people? And he said, he kind of looked around and he said, yeah, but they're way over there. Whereas before they were right there, in his face and in his ear talking to him. It's kind of the same way as we work with these practices, these principles. Those hurts and that past doesn't have such a hold on us.
Yes. And another way, an approach through the scientific approach or the quantum science we use in the Q process. Q stands for quantum. And so we actually can, working with the past experiences and the Q sheets and working with the most advanced psychological practices and quantum science, we can actually create new neural pathways in the brain by redoing our life and about establishing how we want to react in the future. And so we can recreate a world of who we have come here to be. And so we're much more likely to have our default behavior become not our shadowy self, but our divine self. So that's also one way, is changing the neural pathways in the brain. So come to the Q process and we'll help look at that and maybe transform that. There's one more story we wanted to share quickly.
Do we have the time?
Just quickly.
Okay. I'll give the short version of this, and
Yeah.
you feel free to comment. So when we were, or I don't know what point it was in our marriage, and we've done this on a number of occasions. We've received counseling. We've gone to see a marital counselor, and that's always been profitable for various reasons and various teachings and support that we received. So when we went through a period in which we were really struggling, and this particular counselor said to each one of us, "Tell me about your partner," So we each had our chance. And as we began, I'll just speak for myself, but it actually worked both ways. I started saying everything about Denise that was bothering me. It's like, well, she does this and she does that and she doesn't do this and she doesn't do that. And then Denise's turn, and then she got to say, in other words, we were raising up all the problems in our marriage. And the therapist stopped us and said, no. Tell me about Denise. Tell me about Denise. This woman that you chose to marry and spend your life with. Tell me about that woman that helped you make that decision. And in other words, remember this person, and who they were, who they really are, not the current presenting problem. And so as we began to do that, and Denise did it, we did it with each other, there was a real recognition. It was like, that which was presenting itself as the obstacle to our relationship, now it just sort of fell away as we remembered the truth about each other, the enduring qualities of each other. And there was a sort of a metaphor that I've shared many times, is when Denise and I had moved to go back to ministerial school, and we moved everything into the house except for the boxes. The boxes are the last ones to get dealt with. And so, we're down in the garage, and we each had to go through the boxes. And as I was going through them, I would say, "Oh, that's Denise's stuff." And I would put it aside. And then I'd find another box. "Oh, that's mine. Oh, that's her stuff. Oh, that's her stuff." And Denise would come down. It was her turn. And she'd come down and go, "Oh, that's Larry's stuff. Where's my stuff?" And so it was sort of like, she was on one side of this wall of boxes, and I'm on the other side of the wall of boxes. And we're just seeing and objecting to the obstacles of each other's stuff until we worked our way down to the end of this line of boxes, when then we got to see each other face to face and heart to heart. We weren't looking at the boxes anymore. We were looking at each other, the unfettered, authentic being. And we weren't anymore looking at what was separating us.
Yes.
And we fell back into that state of connection and wholeness and harmony and love. And I think that would be the pattern of how we work our way back, is we ask ourselves, am I looking at the boxes? Am I looking at Denise's stuff? Or am I looking at the being? And these practices help us do that.
A lot, absolutely. And the Course says, the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. And that's
Amen.
what I always remember from that story too is removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. What blocks am I having in my world? Several of the questions that are coming in are about that. Kathy says, how do I stay in a state of open and surrender? And I have to become aware of what is blocking me. What is blocking me? And those are usually thoughts that I'm having about the situation or the other person. And the grace prayer is always one, too, that I do for surrender. And that is, reveal what needs to be revealed, heal what needs to be healed, so that I can glorify you, God. And so the first story, we got to surrender. We got to give it up, and that's our will, how this should be. And
surrender has a different connotation, because I think sometimes when we hear the word surrender, it sounds like giving up. But I like to think of it in terms of giving way. It's giving way to a higher perception.
And the one last question here, do you believe the Q process is the one way to accomplish this, or just one of many? Yeah, definitely one of many. One of many. There's so many ways to spiritually awaken and to heal. And this is just one that I have found. And we have 4 other coaches here on site that also believe the same thing. And so we're excited to bring that to you. And it's a practice that has supported us in our spiritual awakening, so that we're not making you, the world, what's wrong with me, right? That's what we're doing. We're healing so that we can be about God's business,
Yes.
We're here to be the light of the world, and these blocks are keeping us from fully expressing. So this is one way, but many of us feel it's a great way, but it's not the only way.
Yeah, and I think that what many people have said who have taken the Q process is that, and there certainly is value for therapy, for us to, get in touch with the source of our pain and go into our childhood stuff. But what's great about the Q process is it doesn't ignore those pains, but it helps us to see how we created beliefs around them that are no longer valid, and they're no longer necessary for us to hold on to those beliefs when we identify this greater self that we've come here to be. And I think it cuts out maybe a lot of the need for a regurgitation and a revisiting of our stories, which, many of us could get stuck in our stories, and 20 years later, we're still telling the story of how awful someone treated us.
Yes.
And that doesn't do us any good, because it keeps us stuck in an identity of who we're not. So I think the Q can speed up our healing.
It speeds up.
And our awareness.
It's a quickening. I love, my little slogan is let go of the story and get on with the glory. We got to let go of our stories. Well, thank you, Reverend Larry, for joining me. Let's close with a prayer. Just join me now as we close the outer eye and allow the Spirit of life now to flow more easily through us. This divine presence is here and now. And we just trust that every person who's in our life is here to help us awaken. That we can use these earthly experiences to know the truth of our being, to be more of who we have come here to be. And we can see the light of God in each one. Thank you, God, for this day, for this ministry, for these aloha, beautiful energy here on this island. We are all grateful to live in this beauty and to be in this special community that is transforming lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in the world. And for that we say, thank you, God. Thank you, God.
Are those your eyes? Is that your smile? Well, I've been looking at you forever, but I never saw you till now. The Christ in you I clearly see. Now I realize the change that happened to me. For the first time, I am looking in your eyes. For the first time, I see the light you are. I do believe how much I see when you're looking back at me. Now I understand what love is. Love is. For the first time. Can this be real? Can this be true? Am I the person I was this morning? And are you the one I knew? It's all so clear. Yes, it can be. All along the truth was right in front of me. For the first time, I am looking in your eyes. For the first time, I see the light you are. I do believe how much I see when you're looking back at me. Now I understand what love is. Love is. For the first time. Just a short time ago, I had given God my love and devotion willingly. I'm overflowing with His love, shining light everywhere as I opened my heart to God. For the first time, I am looking through God's eyes, and for the first time, I see the light you are. And I now believe how much I see when you're looking back at me. And I understand what love is. Love is. For the first time.
Thank you so much. So beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Alethea. So lovely. So this is a time in our service that we want to acknowledge that God is the source of our good. There's so many ways you could give now through our online giving. We're encouraging you now to sign up for the auto renewal so that we can just manage our finances here, and that you are here now as a member, and we're so blessed by your generosity that is coming through. There's so many ways to give. There's now Tithely option, which allows you to do a check as well as a credit card. And it's there's a platform on there. There's a text to give now. But if you go on to our donate page, you'll find all these variety of ways that Reverend Johanna has set up for us to make it easy for us to give to this ministry, to give to a mission of transforming lives and inspiring people to make a positive difference in the world. So let's take our offering in our hands now, and we want to give this with a sense of generosity. So if you've already given yours electronically, just do this affirmation with me together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
The wonderful world of aloha is not just a fanciful dream. One wish and happiness holds you. Come with me. The wonderful world of aloha is waiting to welcome you home. One wish and magic enfolds you. Come with me. Follow your heart across the horizon. Follow your heart. Follow your heart. Fly on the wings of a trade wind to our golden land by the sea. You'll find a world that will capture you and rapture you. So come with me. Oh, come with me to the wonderful world, to the wonderful, wonderful world of
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Alethea. The wonderful world of aloha. Ah, so beautiful. So this is our closing, and we just want to bless you. We want to bless all the participants that arrive here to create this space for you. I'm going to bless each one. Right here, there's all these beautiful souls on pictures on each of the chairs, and I'm just blessing each one of you. So grateful for your presence here, your energy here, and for you online. We couldn't do this without you. And we want to maintain this beautiful ministry by bringing you these online services. So your feedback is so welcome and so wanted. We're having so much fun on Zoom every week, every day. We're having something to do. We invite you to join us. Again, we're here to create a greater connection to God. So we thank you for your participation. Thank you for your donations and your love offerings and your tithes and your investment in this beautiful ministry. So let us close with the prayer of protection together. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is.
Jehovah, give me eyes of faith and help me always see. There are more with us than against us. Courageous let me be. Courage, give me courage. With courage I'll endure. Jehovah, give me courage. Your victory is sure. join with me. Let this be my joyment now. With every breath I take, let this be my joyous now. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Aloha oe, aloha oe, eke ona ona no I kalipo. One fond embrace, ahoy, until we meet again.
God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Stay around. We're going to have a board update right now with Dr. Thomas Gallagher. Thank you, Reverend Larry, for your participation today. Our beautiful musicians. Thank you so much, Kathy and Alethea. And so let's invite you, Dr. Thomas, to do this board update. You've got your microphone.
Get a podium
right here.
See if I can.
Let me grab it for you, Tom. Oh, we have a break? Didn't know we were going to have a break.
So are we off?
I don't think so. We're good.
We're on, huh? Excellent, excellent, excellent. We're doing a mini board update so that people know kind of what's going on and we can get some information, news that you can use at the present time as to what's going on. Thank you so much, Reverend Denise, Reverend Larry, for your talk about the Q process, because that's extremely important as we get ready to move into a mission-centric ministry. And thank you for that whole introduction.
Absolutely.
There are 5 of us now. That's right.
Five,
there are
yeah.
5
I said
coaches.
4, there's 5.
Yeah, there's 5. There's Reverend Denise, Reverend Levitt, Reverend Margie, Mary Paulson,
and you.
then me.
Yeah.
I will be in the real early future.
Yeah.
That sounds great. That
So
sounds
wonderful.
great. Well, as we start working on that, it's going to be extremely important as we start looking at the church's Q card as well. And that will be coming up before too long. We'll be trying to do a church Q card as to what is the church's shadow? What is the church's Q card? What is this church here to do, to be? And that is going to be so exciting. It's going to be so much fun to be able to work on. So stay focused for that part. Slide. If you could do a full screen, that would be great. I would appreciate that. And we're in slide 3, the board committees. So for everybody, I know that you noticed last week, we talked about all of the board's committees. There are 10 board committees at the present time, and all 10 of them have now finished their charter. And you say, well, why do we have a charter? What's that whole purpose? The important part of the charter is so that when you get ready to look at what committee would you like to be on, you can look at the whole charter. You can look at the responsibilities, the duties, what it takes, what the qualifications are to be on each of the committees. So do look through all of the committees. They are on the website, and the people that are currently assigned or nominated and elected by the board are on the website. look at them, make sure that your name is on there. And if your name isn't on there and you want to be on there, please jump right in, let us know, because the board would love to be able to look at additional people to put on the board, onto the committees. Most of the committees are fairly full, but there's always turnover and there's always a chance to be able to move into those committees. There's a lot of you that are very, very qualified at being able to be on some of the committees because of your expertise. So please share that expertise with us, because we would love to have you on the committees with us. Next slide was with regards to Premier Restoration. It's as you well remember, about 4 or 5 months ago, we had a backup of sewage that backed up into the lower campus, and there was an obstruction that occurred between the church's sewage part and the city's main sewage line, and all of that sewage backed up. And because it backed up into the lower campus area, the cottage area, which is where the preschool all is, we had to close all of that down, and we had to get a mitigation company to come in, because obviously sewage into areas of a preschool needs to be taken care of expeditiously, professionally, and thoroughly. So walls were taken out, everything was sprayed, everything was debugged, degermed to be able to get everything sterilized. It's all now fixed back up. But because of the COVID and because of this being a church, we found out actually that because this is a business as well, that the insurance that we have doesn't cover that, because it was an obstruction that was a low pressure obstruction, and they just don't cover it when it comes to sewage. Therefore, we went back to the restoration company and said, would you work with us? They were willing to work with us, and blessings to them, they reduced the price overall by $20,000. So we are very grateful that we are able to get that done for a bit lower price than what initially it was, particularly since insurance won't be covering. Next slide, with regards to financial report, due to the coronavirus requirements and the reduced number of staff that are able to be here at the present time in the sanctuary, you're going to have to put up with me. I know that you would rather hear Debbie's articulate, quick, concise, very right-on kinds of comments, but hang in there with me for just a little bit, and we'll see what we can do with being able to get everything discussed. We are going to bring all of the accounting back in-house. The reason that we're going to do that is because the accounting firm that we have that has been doing it for us for the last 1.5 to 2 years has had some issues with losing an accountant. We needed to be able to bring it in-house, because whenever we were talking with the accountant or the accounting firm, we were not getting answers as quickly and as thoroughly as we needed. So we're going to bring that all back in-house and make sure that we have got better continuity for everyone. We ask the board, and the board approved the hiring of a steward of finance. That information went out on April the 12th, and the position closed on April the 19th. We had an applicant that was very, very good. There was only one, and we have hired her, and Lisa Inslee will start in that position on May the 1st, which is a wonderful thing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. It's really nice to have somebody that has been around for a long time, that knows all of the system and knows how things work and can integrate right in and be able to assimilate with the rest of the staff in such a nice and expeditious way. Next slide. By doing so, we're going to bring all of our books back in through QuickBooks Online, so that particularly in this time frame when we've got a reduced ability to be on campus, we can have people that can input a lot of the information into QuickBooks Online and work remotely. We think that this will bring in much more comprehensive and cleaner reports, particularly it will alleviate the difficulties that we've had with not being able to get reports as quickly. And for a period of time, we were having difficulties because we didn't know exactly where we were financially, and we weren't able to get a hold of people when it was downtown. This way, we'll be able to have it here, and we will be able to do it immediately. The March financial statements are online. Look there, and you can look at all of those, and they're on the website. Next slide. As you would expect, during the COVID crisis and the difficulties that we've had a decrease in donations. This month of March, we recorded a $5,000 deficit over the expected or the projected budget that we had. You may ask, well, what can I do to be able to help that? Probably the most important thing that you can do is to sign up for direct deposit, auto deposit, so that we can be assured that money will be coming in routinely and expectedly. I think it's extremely important to remember that we are tithing not to the church, but we are tithing as source, because we are the source. We, as we move into mission-centric ministry, are going to be the source that will keep this church alive and functioning and blessing and healing and donating to this whole community what is important to be able to make the community a better, more wholesome place. Next slide. The Paycheck Protection Plan, Paycheck Protection Plan. We were so proud of ourselves. We were wonderful. We got everything in. We were here till about 10, 11 o'clock on the Thursday night when on the East Coast it had already turned Friday. We thought that we were golden because we got everything in advance of the time frame, or right at the beginning of the time frame. We checked with the bank frequently, asking, where are we? What have we done? Are we okay? And the story that we got was, well, at the present time, we really can't tell you because all of the workers are working on them and we're not to bother them. We were quite dismayed and quite disappointed when we found out that even though we took a screenshot of our submission, that we weren't in the queue and that somehow something had happened. Because we did have a screenshot and the bank said, blessings, we appreciate the fact that you did get it in time. They put us at the top of the queue for phase 2. So please keep the church and the preschool in your prayers that we are able to get money from the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan, because in fact there's a fair amount of personnel, as you well understand, when you combine the church with the preschool. We are certainly wanting to be able to make sure that the preschool is well funded and being able to take care of things, particularly in light of the fact that the preschool does such a great job of being able to work with the children and make a difference in this world. That brings us to the Unity School. It's extremely important to also realize that we have developed a marvelous, wonderful, collaborative relationship now with the preschool. Again, we are working hand in hand, collaboratively, and with love and with generosity of spirit. The preschool committee is working that whole area out well. It's composed of the school administration, parents from the school, people that have been involved with the school for many, many years, as well as from the board. And I am very, very pleased and very proud of the work that is being done. As you well know, the church preschool has a reputation that spans the whole state, and people love to get their children into the Unity Preschool because it is looked at as being such a wonderful feeder school. And I hope I can say this one without getting choked up, but it just warms my heart and touches me when parents of the children that are in the preschool come to me to tell me that they were students at this preschool, and that in the process of coming through this preschool, they develop such warm, close relationships with other students, and that when they get into Punahou, Iolani, and other schools on island, that their best friends and the ones that they love the most are the children that they went to school with here at Unity School. So blessings and blessings to the staff that foster relationships, positive relationships, and make a difference, make a huge difference, not only in this church, but in this world, because it is amazing what the preschool does to be able to warm, bring up, and foster wonderful relationships, personal relationships that make a difference in their lives and in the world. I realize that this has been a fairly short update, and I look forward to the time when we can sit down and have a longer conversation with total transparency that's a little easier to do when we are doing it one-on-one in a group, and being able to get that all to work more expeditiously and smoother. But know that this is a beautiful community, that in fact this church is making a huge difference in the world and in this community as we continue with things like the Q process that was mentioned earlier in the sermon. Join us now, if you will, with the breakouts. And what I will do is join you in with the breakout room as well for the connection. And as soon as we are able to do that, if there are questions that you have for the board, I will go into a breakout room with you and we can answer some of those. So blessings and blessings to all of you. And this will conclude the board update. So anything else that you wanted to say, Reverend? Meet us on Zoom. Sounds great. Zoom. And it's all you have to do is just go into the eCampus, click on that one, and it should take you right there. And if it doesn't, let me know, and we'll do what we can do to be able to make sure that you get in. Any questions that came in that I needed to answer right now? And my phone is in the back. So blessings to all of you. Join us up in the chat rooms in just a few minutes. Mahalo. Bye-bye.